Monday. We are back. It is the week of the start of the NHL regular season. We are going to do a boatload of team previews, talk about some waiver moves for teams to get down to their 23-man roster, some signings on the weekend, getting all the RFAs except one signed new deals. But we'll start with the pre-show. Russ, go ahead.
Yeah, so Sportsnet just broke that Green Day has signed like a deal, like almost like a 2-year deal with them to sort of work on like multi-platform content. So one of the things is they made a song, Fire Ready Aim, that's going to be played, I guess, before their big games on maybe the NHL Network or on NBC. I'm not sure. Probably NBC. And so they're trying to do that the same way the NFL has done that over the years with some music to kind of pump it up. And I think Green Day will do a great job with it. Now, I am biased. I am a big fan. I've been to a lot of shows. But if people go back and listen to the Green Day Simpsons song, it's fantastic. Like, and they just did the Simpsons theme their way, right? So I think this is cool. Apparently back in, and I think it was 2016 when they were touring, they were going to be playing at the Fan Fest in Toronto, and then they had to cancel because Billy Joe got an illness. And this is like sort of like the makeup on this because they always wanted to do something, and apparently Trey Cool, the drummer, is a big hockey fan. He was a Sharks fan, but now that he's sort of moved to the Anaheim area, he's an Anaheim fan. So he's the driving force behind it.
Right.
And I think this is great because, again, if we look at the halftime show for the NFL and they're going with like Shakira and J-Lo, they don't really understand the people that are watching, I don't think, their demographic. But I think the NHL understands it because I think having Green Day, you do understand it. You understand that you're going to get like a hard-edged sound, and that's something where I think hockey fans can relate to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of ladies with rather pronounced buttocks, then the halftime show.
Good night, everyone.
Yes, at the halftime show at the Super Bowl.
Apparently, that is. That's fine.
It's for you, but I'm sorry. It's I will be watching fight videos for NHL fight videos instead of watching.
Right, you have your halftime Super Bowl tradition.
Yeah, well, if it's a good musical artist, I'll watch them. But when was the last time that happened? My goodness, it was McCartney and a couple and Foo Fighters.
Springsteen.
I said good ones. But now we have to talk about the NFL here because I am convinced that the NFL could be the worst professional league out there. They are a farce. They talk out of one edge of their mouth and misrepresent what they supposedly stand for on the other. And that, there was all this stuff a few years ago about concern about concussions based on the civil suit that they had with former players. They instituted a number of rules ruling out head-to-head hits that players would be ejected for helmet-to-helmet hits. Well, yesterday, in one instance, Vontaze Burfict, who is I call him the Matt Cook of the NFL. He's a repeat offender. And I think that's a good analogy because
I'm not even sure Matt Cook. I think Matt Cook wasn't even this bad.
No one gets higher praise than that.
But he hit an opposing player with the crown of his helmet, and he got. And I remember he's got a record. He's got like a Rafi Torres like record.
Yeah, he's already had 2 4-game suspensions. He's been suspended for like 10 games, fined 6 times. Like they've let this guy get through the system. And the guy just had made a catch, and he was on his knees, and he just levels them. And then he goes away, takes off his helmet, blows kisses to the opposing crowd, and smile. Like,
it's I do as much as I want to talk about the NFL, and I do think that they're ridiculous. We do have 4 teams to review today.
Oh yeah, we'll move on in a second. I just wanted to.
We got one more little thing after that.
Go ahead.
So the other incident involved New England and Buffalo, and Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, was hit helmet to helmet as a New England defender was tackling him. The hit was to the head. It knocked him out cold. And the NFL, the director of or assistant director of officiating said that hit wasn't severe enough to have the player ejected. And to make it matters even worse, there was a penalty, an offensive holding penalty on the play. So there wasn't even the short-term benefit for Buffalo in a game that they lost by 6 points. They deserved to lose that game because they had a number of opportunities that they blew. But the whole point of this is the NFL is talking out of both sides of their mouth. They talk about head hits and about legislating them out of the game. But
you remember when I said that referee told that player, "Hey, don't hit Tom so hard next time."
Yeah.
And I told you that I felt like Carson Wentz and other quarterbacks don't get that same protection. It's true, and
it is true.
That's all.
And if one of the Bills players after the games basically said, if this was number 12 on the other team and it was one of us, we would have been knocked out of the game. I think that there are different rules for different players, like Gretzky in the NHL back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
There is a level of you don't touch this guy, and it's crap. And that's why I'm saying these leagues are a complete farce, and the NFL is a complete farce.
Yep.
No, I don't disagree.
Okay.
And I don't disagree with the whole pass interference review thing when what a disaster that is. So hey.
And the funny thing is, all these coaches are doing these reviews, and I think one has been overturned. Every single one of them, they're not using it in the proper.
There was one that was overturned in the Eagles game, I think, right?
Right, I think that was the only one.
That was the only one.
I mean, it's on my shirt. I don't know if you guys can read what my shirt says, but it says hockey. It's like football, but for men. That's what my shirt says. Just so we're talking about
football there for a guy who's going to win Rookie of the Year, but that's all right.
Anyway, that's what my shirt says. All right, let's do this. Okay.
Gotta beat our judge.
All right. Today.
Who's not?
What was that?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Is Peter coming?
Yeah, in here. Peter in a minute. Let's start.
Okay, sure. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, September 30th. 30 days, half September, April, June, and November. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, September 30th. I out-psyched myself. Hi, Hockey World. It's Monday, September 30th, 2019.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm a fan of the New York team that did make the playoffs.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Poor Mike. He gets upset. And heck, that was like Max Headroom. I liked it.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time or other times to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are going to get to 4 teams today. We do have just some news first.
Yes.
The Flyers are over in Europe with, and so are the Blackhawks. There's a bunch of stuff going on there too. That's fascinating, I think. That might be affecting a trade, I was told. That's an interesting rumor that the Flyers may have a deal, but they can't make it because, of course, they're not going to ship a guy back from Europe.
Right.
Well, they haven't cut down to 23 yet because
they're playing tonight.
Right.
They're playing in 30 and 45 minutes.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
They have special
difference.
They have special dispensation because they're playing. This is an exhibition game, correct? It's not a
right. They're playing Lausanne,
right.
And Lausanne, I think.
Lausanne,
yes. I've been to the city, which is a beautiful city. I didn't see a hockey game there. I saw my one hockey game that I saw was in Bern.
Okay.
But this is a really historic team. It's been around since like the 1920s. Bill Meltzer has a really good article on it. You can check it out.
Well, let's start with this, and then we'll work to the signings, and then we'll start previews. The voluminous list of waivers this morning.
Today's waiver wire is pretty crazy.
And here, I'm not going to read them all. I'm just going to talk about like the ones that I think are extremely interesting. Starting with and Russ, Josh Hosang being waived by the Islanders.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get through waivers. I will give you a spoiler alert. I think they're all going to get through waivers because I think all NHL GMs have the same problem, and I don't think anybody's going to claim anybody else's guy.
Well, the issue right now is like it's very hard. This is the best day to sneak a person through waivers, right? Because the season's like a couple days away. No one's gonna be able to make a major. I mean, I think the only thing I do say that I think Hosang, and I'll tell you that I think Thomas Hickey could very easily get picked up.
But I don't think they will. They could.
Hickey, there's some teams that definitely. I mean, if you're the Jets, you're not looking at Thomas Hickey. I mean, that's like
Russ. You're probably right, but let's go on the assumption that you're wrong and say that.
We should go on that assumption.
Yeah. I always go on that assumption, but please continue.
No, just for the purpose of conversation.
No, it's normal for me. Go ahead.
the thing with Hickey is he's got a $2.5 million cap hit.
Right.
So that I think is going to dissuade.
Yeah, but you got no Dustin Byfuglien in Winnipeg. I mean,
you don't know of a final solution on Byfuglien. You don't know whether he's coming back or not. And that's
but even if he comes back, I mean, don't the Jets still have a little bit of money there?
No, they don't have enough room. If Byfuglien comes back, if they pick up Hickey, I think they would be over the cap. So because with the signings, and we'll talk about them.
No, the signings, I thought because they went a little bit because they went for the shorter, less expensive deal.
Lightning was still 6.75, and Connor was 7.14. So that's almost $14 million. And we'll talk. Peter's coming on here. We'll talk about
on right now. So Peter, we're mentioning something. We're talking about Thomas Hickey for a second, who's on waivers, and I said that I think he is a natural pickup for the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
But we're saying we might not be able to actually make that work or not.
Peter is having
vanished away.
Audio issues. So give him a second
here.
But no. So I mean, Hickey, Peter, we were talking about the waiver wire today, and Thomas Hickey from the Islanders was placed on waivers. Now he's got term left in his contract at $2.5 million. We know that the Jets. We know that the Jets are right now in limbo with the Byfuglien situation. So I don't believe they would have the cap room to pick up a $2.5 million defenseman if Byfuglien came back. So that's what I think would dissuade them from trying to pick up Hickey.
I think that's exactly it. And one of the things I think has to be, I just heard the press conference in Kevin Shovel Day Off about 45 minutes ago. He was asked different ways by different guys what's going on with Buff, and he sort of got a little uncharacteristically a little short. And he basically said, "When I know, you'll know."
There's no one who hates this kind of situation more than Cheveldaev. Like Cheveldaev is such a planner. Cheveldaev has everything planned out to the upteenth degree. So, yeah, I'm not surprised he got short.
Yeah, he was just. I think it's undue pressure. Mark Chipman was speaking at the day Laine signed. Mark Chipman was speaking at a Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce luncheon, and he talked, as he always does of those things, talked about the Jets, and he said they were completely blindsided by Buff. Had no idea. And, I was chatting with some people on Saturday night. I'm sort of talking to a couple other people. I think I'm getting a sense of where this is going. I just want to confirm it a little bit more, and I think I'll have a pretty good idea in the next day or two if what I suspect is happening, but that'll be for
your eye on Hockey Buzz, guys, because that'll be a good one to watch for. I honestly think that, I talked to sources today about this, and they thought that they had the money. So I just texted them just now, and with what you guys said there, and they that they don't have the money to do it, and the source got back to me and said they have the money. Now that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean that they have another way of making they could clear up free enough money to make that happen.
They could send somebody. They could send somebody down and clear.
Yeah, but they need Thomas Hickey in the worst way. The problem with the Jets, like obviously with anybody in the Central Division right now, is you got to get out strong, and if you don't get out strong, you're in trouble. And as I wrote today, and today I wrote a blog about what I think the most desperate teams are in the NHL, and I put the Jets are one of them in the top 5.
And Hickey's a left shot, so
he's a left shot, but he's a D-man, all right? So, I know everybody wants to have right defenseman, and all this stuff, but he's an experienced D-man who can play the game. At $2.5 million, he's actually a pretty good bargain when you look at what, top 4 defensemen get. Whether or not you consider him
he's not a top 4, though.
He can be. He slips into last year, I can say this, and I was covering the Islanders a lot because we didn't have an Islanders ready for a while, stuff like that, and I was just impressed with him, his ability to actually slip up and play top 4 minutes when he had to.
Yeah.
He's not, that's not what they want him to be, obviously. Not the Island, but the Islanders are doing things for their own reasons. But
he's got 2 more years left at 2.5 after this year, so that's a commitment. So
if he was a UFA, the Jets would sign him
a 2-year,
$5 million deal.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I don't think any of these guys will be signed. I think they're all slipping through, and I think all the teams know it.
Well, let me just.
I think you're right, Russ. But the one team that needs to grab someone is the Oilers.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I thought. Okay, the Hosang waiver. Edmonton was the team that sprung right there because you put him with a Draisaitl or a McDavid. and you've got instant offense. Now, I know his off the ice, his attitude situations, I mean, it's well chronicled, but I don't think that the Oilers can really be concerned with that right now. They
won't like his undisciplined penalties. He won't.
Right. Now, just touching on a couple other names, and then we'll move on. Gustav Forsling with Carolina, young defenseman who got traded from the Blackhawks. Nikolai Goldobin with Vancouver. He lost out to Adam Gaudette. Yeah. Sam Gagner and Brandon Manning in Edmonton. Big salaries that are going to get buried down in Bakersfield. The Leafs waived Nick Patan. Touch on any one of these. I know that you had a reaction on Patan. I think the Leafs are calculating that the 2-year deal that they signed him with, which is a one-way deal for 2 years, will scare off teams who don't want to make a commitment for and pay somebody to play in the minors on a one-way deal. But if they claim him, then he would have to be in the NHL, and he did have a good camp.
Or he didn't, depending on if you believe the stuff that came out about Babcock,
which I don't.
Well, yeah, that whole quote seems really weird and rather suspect. If you're Nick Patan, you're caught in a really weird place. You've got a team that wants to keep you for their reasons, not for what you think you're being kept for.
Yeah,
and that's sort of a tough one, because fine, you play on the Marlies and you do that and you're getting paid, like, great, you're making money, but you're not getting anywhere.
Right.
And, by this point in time, I think Nick Patan should be a player that is finding a regular role somewhere in the NHL. And the Leafs don't want to let him go. And we've seen this happen. They did it with, what's his face? The defenseman.
Frankie Corrado.
Yep.
Corrado. And it's a tough, cruel game of asset management when that happens. And, I think Patan needs to start someplace. Like, he's another guy who needs a fresh start. But I'm more worried that he and his former linemate, Brendan Leipzig, are just going to have the same kind of career shuffle because they can't catch on.
Well, there are teams like Detroit, that should be desperate for forwards. Detroit was terrible. I watched 2 games on the weekend. They're a pitiful team, and a guy like Patan probably could play on their second or third line. I mean, this is the reality here. A guy like Casey DeSmith, who signed a 3-year deal with Pittsburgh, he gets waived because Tristan Jarry, who's making $675,000, they know he'll get claimed on waivers because he's cheap. And they know that teams don't want to pick up a guy who's going to be under contract for 3 years at over $1 million as a backup goaltender. So they know that they can get DeSmith down to Scranton, whereas they know that they're not going to be able to get Jarry down to Scranton.
So I got 2 things to say about some of these that haven't been mentioned. You mentioned Detroit, who I did see a few days ago, and Seider played great. It's not about Seider's play. I think Yzerman is saving him from a bad season.
Yeah, and they sent Veleno and they sent Zadina down to Grand Rapids. They're protecting them from the crap. Yeah. This is a team that's bottoming out. Like I said, I watched them. They're bad. It's Dylan Larkin, it's Bertuzzi, it's Mantha, and it's a bunch of crap.
So that's what I think Detroit's doing. And for whatever reason, this year Detroit did not have an AHL camp, so those guys stayed up longer because they just didn't have a camp this year in the AHL. So now. The Ranger cuts have made some shockwaves here. So Vitaly Kravtsov has been sent down. Philip Hedl has been sent down. Michael Haley is staying. So let's talk about this for a minute. So Ryan Strome is the Rangers' second-line center, but about a week ago, David Quinn gave Philip Hedl a chance to be the second-line center. He said, hey, this job could be yours. Apparently he didn't pass the test, and now it looks like he's being sent down either to learn how to play center in Hartford or because he couldn't play center right now in New York. I'm not sure, but either way, he got sent down. They're keeping a guy like Haley up there who's limited. And Nemestikov has made the team as a winger, not a center. Now, they have a lot of guys that can play center. Now, the interesting thing here is, and I don't know what the plan is in Hartford, but my plan would be play Kravtsov and Hartford as a center. When I interviewed Kravtsov in the winter, playing center for the World Junior team. That's what you should – if you want a potential big-time center, a guy who can play second-line center, it will be Kravtsov. It will never be Filipino. I said from the day he was drafted, he is not a center, and I would hope the Rangers know better, but sometimes they don't. And so the other thing that's coming into play here, and we could talk about it from other teams' perspectives, is now the enforcer is now taking a roster spot again from other guys. It's happened in New York. It's probably about to happen in Philly with Chris Stewart too,
and Ottawa with Scott Sabourin. Just touching on one more name, and then
what do you think about that, Ek?
No, I agree with you.
No, but what do you think about that happening again since the Stanley Cup? I think it's a knee-jerk reaction.
It is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction for sure, but it's not. It's in a way, it's kind of 2 years in the making, and not just the Stanley Cup. Because remember, people forget the Capitals were a really tough team too. Like they won the Stanley Cup based on that as well. They beat the Knights because they were just more physical, right? So, I mean, the physicality has won the last 2 Stanley Cups, not just one. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but I think that and you can't just be an enforcer. You have to obviously be able to skate now, but if you're going to have a guy who can skate pretty well.
Has anybody talked about Michael Haley being a good skater ever?
No, but he's not like.
No, but Stewart at least can say is a better skater. I don't even think Haley.
Oh yeah, I mean Stewart. I think Stewart's actually a good move because he's a good locker room guy too. Like he really is the kind of guy that team needs. He's a solid individual person. I think that's a smart with all this with so many young players on that team in Philly. I think that's not a bad idea, Stewart.
Now the last name was Daniel Sprong, who got waived by Anaheim, which I was a little surprised at. And I mean, if there are GMs that are open to picking up a player, there's a player who I think has some talent. But I wanted to switch to
Ben Berchik too. Like that's another one that.
Yeah, but he's making money. That's the problem.
He's making money, but he's a goal scorer. I mean, there are some teams like the one team I would look at for tomorrow on Ho-Sang. Maybe Sprong, maybe Verche, is Montreal, because Montreal, remember, they went and they put a huge offer together to cheat this summer.
They have cap room.
And they've got cap. They were planning on spending more, and then they went after Duchesne. They were planning on spending more money to help their offense, right? And if they have a chance, doesn't Ho-Sang feel like a guy that could really work in Montreal?
I think he could work in a lot of markets. I just think it's going to end up happening in a trade because I don't think these GMs are going to want to do that because all of a sudden another GM will claim one of their players. Like I think it's just everybody's going to leave them alone.
I wanted to switch to Peter here because the focus on Winnipeg, because Peter, the Jets had to wait to the 11th hour, but in the end, I don't know if Cheveldayoff could have done a better job in terms of getting Connor locked up at 7 years at 7.14 and Laine on a 2-year bridge. Now, just my opinion here. I think Laine is going down the road of Trouba. He signs a 2-year deal, then he goes to arbitration, and then he probably ends up forcing his way out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it changes, but I get that Trouba feeling out of him. Whereas Connor, they got him now for the bulk of his prime of his career at a pretty good number.
So, Mike Leo's comments after Laine signed the deal was this. He goes, we had some complaints with the season. They had some complaints with the season. Yeah. This deal goes a lot way to resolving those complaints. That was from I'm probably paraphrasing the last bit. I can look up the quote. That was the last bit. Mm-hmm. Patrick Laine is going to make a ton of money on after this, one way or another. And this, we've seen this happen a few times this offseason with the RFA deals, right? Just like Besser. And that's it. There's a chance to sort of really jump in terms of huge dollars, or at least be qualified at a very good rate above $7.5 million.
Right, 8.25 would be the qualifying offer on the third year. Yeah.
Laine just spoke, and interesting enough, 8.25 million is exactly what Blake Wheeler's making, and 2 years from now, right? Just keep those timelines in mind, right? It sort of flows, and how the captain, it's all, I think there's a lot of underlying logic to how this unfolds. Keep in mind that Laine just had a press conference, and I couldn't hear it because I was out in a quick meeting. And he spoke. Apparently, I heard that sort of the recap. He spoke very well, was very honest and truthful, and handled it very businesslike. I think when Laine speaks and stuff, and it's not going through people, it's not being translated from Finnish. It sounds like maybe the issue really was both sides had to address what their concerns were and find that common ground. I think it's a smart deal for Laine to take. It's going to give him 2 years to essentially bet on himself.
Yep.
Yeah, he's not a perfect player. He's got an incredible shot. He's got incredible hands with the puck, but he still has to learn a little bit around the game. He still has to do a few things that he hasn't been doing as a player consistently.
Yeah, so he's got to have as many assists as he gets goals. It's like there's certain things he doesn't need to get assists to.
Connor too, and Connor, you're buying 2 UFA years, right?
Yeah.
Three.
Sorry, UFA plus 1. So he's a little different in that Connor's a bit of a byproduct of who he's been playing with, and the Jets, I think, are betting that at this salary cap range, at the salary level he in the cap right now. One, the cap's going to go up a bit, and this isn't going to be such a bad deal. But two, he will consistently get between 25 and 35 goals year after year, as long as they don't upset the apple cart. And I think in that range, $7.143 million is a fair value. They get to control it. He has a no movement clause, I believe, in the last 2 years, which is different, right? Normally, you see those in the first part of the contract, not the last part.
Right.
So I think that's a little curious too.
But I will say this: the thing about Connor over Laine is, like you were saying, Connor does get assists. Actually, there were times in his career when he got a lot of assists. He can open up for other players.
Exactly. Connor's one of the top guys in the league that if you get him inside the red line going down the wing straight, watch out.
Yeah.
And he will go into the corner and retrieve the puck, which is something Laine doesn't do. Or doesn't do well. So there's an aspect of why he works with Scheifele and Wheeler that Laine doesn't, and that's the side of Laine's game, that has to come on board.
But that's the maturity of Laine off the ice too. It's like, don't demand to be a top liner, prove you are.
Right.
Yeah, prove you are, exactly. And hopefully, got some good advice from Liut. And I mean, it'd be really no one from what I heard in the conference. I haven't heard what those complaints were. No, I don't think either side revealed them, which is fine. But it'll be interesting to see how they both measure it too and what comes of this. I don't think Laine necessarily wants out Mike and is going the Trouba route. I think he wants to be paid like he's just seen a few other guys get paid, particularly Rantanen, particularly Marner, and particularly Matthews.
Well,
and I'm not comparing him to Marner or Matthews in game, but the value of them to the team. That's what they're probably measuring on. And if you want his, and I think Liut's point is, if you want his full value, you need to consider these things. And the Jets' point is, if you want us to pay him for his full value, he needs to do those things. Let's figure this out together, and we'll pay you well to do it.
I would like to suggest something that we launch into the Winnipeg preview right now, because while we're here,
I was gonna say we'll push Toronto till tomorrow, and
that's fine. Because while we have Peter here right now, and we're talking about Winnipeg already.
Yeah, but let me just put one more thing, and then we can move on to Winnipeg, because I wanted to ask you on this, Ak, because the other contract was Rantanen, and I raised a shitstorm on Twitter on Saturday when that deal came down, because I said Rantanen is the equal or possibly slightly better than Mitch Marner, because he's a bigger player, because he's just as offensively talented. And Joe Sakic got him at 9.25 for 6 years, same length as Marner. And I said, I'm not complaining that Kyle Dubas got Marner signed, because that was a much needed thing after the Nylander situation that they get Marner signed, but they paid a premium. And when you put them side by side, and I had somebody give me some negative feedback and saying, well, Marner was great in the playoffs and he scored 94 points. Rantanen scored 87 points, and he had 14 points in 12 playoff games.
How many playoff series did Toronto win, and how many playoff series did Colorado?
Right, he's just as good. He's a different type of player. Marner is much more of a playmaking, offensively creative.
Yeah, they're totally not. They're totally different players. I mean, if you were to ask me who I want on my team, it depends on what I need on my team. Like both of them are totally different. If you need playmaking, then yeah, Marner's by far a better playmaker. But he's a playmaking winger, which is a weird thing. So you end up in a spot, like.
But they're sort of on an equal plane. I mean, they're different type of players, but they're sort of on an equal plane. And you're talking about paying $1.6 million more a year for 6 years.
Yeah, but you're also talking about trying to sell water in the desert versus water in the city. I mean, I'm just saying that it really comes down. It's not just about what the player is worth. It's about how much the team needs the player. And what happened here with Marner is they knew Marner's camp knew, because of the way Dubas handled the Nylander situation last year. They knew that they had him. They just had him. And that was the end of the day. Where in Colorado, yes, they also kind of had him, but there was not nearly the kind of desperate. Just all the publicity, all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like that. You're paying a premium because he's a Maple Leaf, unfortunately, and because what happened before.
And the end result, in the end, what's going to happen is
not an $11 million player. That Marner's not. I mean, that we talked about that.
Right, but in the end, the result is going to be that Colorado held the line as much as they possibly could with Rantanen, because 2 or 3 years down the line, they're going to probably sign McKinnon and make McKinnon the higher paid player, probably $11, $12 million, whatever. Whereas Marner, his big contract, along with Tavares and along with Matthews, is eventually going to force the Leafs to make some tough decisions, either letting Tyson Barrie walk or trading William Nylander, which is, I think, eventually that's going to be the costs. But anyway, I think
that the real interesting thing is, with Rantanen's contract was how it could possibly affect McKinnon. You know what I mean? Like McKinnon's that to me was the interesting part of that.
Right.
But McKinnon's not the kind of guy who would really care. Like they got lucky there a little bit because of McKinnon's personality, actually. I think McKinnon's like, okay, I'm going to be, I'm not going to be the highest paid guy for a bit here. But I eventually will be, and good for him. This is his, we need him back. We need him here.
Yeah, they paid him.
There's definitely a good feeling in Colorado of everybody saying that this team's going to be like the next greatest thing, right? So Colorado has a whole vibe going on right now.
They paid him market rate 3 years ago, and now the market has exploded. Okay, let's get back to Winnipeg.
Let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets.
Can I just read you a couple Line quotes just so you have an understanding?
Go ahead.
He goes, "I know that I will be good for the next 2 years. I'm going to score a lot of goals, that's for sure. I've always trusted myself, and this is no exception. I'm going to be betting on myself in these 2 years. It was still a good deal for both sides." This is from Ken Wiebe of The Athletic. "It doesn't matter if it's a 2-year deal or an 8-year deal. I've got to be better. I still want to score. Nothing is going to change. I still have to play the same way if it's a longer deal or a bridge deal. I've just got to find new ways to score and add some consistency. We'll be fine." That's a changed way of thinking for Laine.
Right.
Thinking about the bigger picture, not just about putting goals in the net. Yes, that's what he wants to do. That's what he likes. But that's a different way of saying stuff. The proof will be if it's a long-term way of thinking.
He's still a kid, I mean, let's face the fact, how old is he now?
21.
He's 21 friggin' years old. He's been a superstar all his life. He's succeeded everywhere he's ever played. And yeah, I think this holdout was a little bit of a maturing process for him. For what it's worth, being over there and the
holdout was probably a maturing process, but whatever he wants to institute into his game, I'm not sure he could do it now this season because he hasn't had any chance to practice it.
Now, okay, so Winnipeg right now, they bring back Hellebuck, they bring back Brossoit, they send Eric Comrie down to Manitoba. Defensively and forward wise, I think they're in pretty good
stack. They're stacked.
But Peter, I can't help but be fixated on the blue line and to say that that's going to be the key to whether this team makes it, just misses out, and how far they can succeed if they do make it.
The blue line and Connor Hellebuck will determine everything.
Yeah.
Connor Hellebuck had a mediocre season last year.
Yep.
And he needs to pull himself up to be a 915 to 920 goaltender.
Exactly.
That's what he's paid to be. That's the deal he signed after playing better than that.
Yep.
With the way the defense is now, and I'm going to just go on the assumption that we probably will not see Dustin Byfuglien back. And that's the way the Jets have to proceed. They have to leave the cap space open, but they have to proceed. The Byfuglien won't be there. Connor Hellebuyck there'll probably be no more pressure on Connor Hellebuyck right now unless he's in a Stanley Cup final. He has to shore up between the posts because he's going to see a lot of rubber.
Yeah.
Jets played a very boring style of hockey in the preseason, probably out of necessity and some defensive changes and processes they made. Maurice alluded to that last night. But it's not going to change when you're playing against real NHLers, not fringe guys, not guys filling in spots to give other guys rest in the preseason for injury protection and stuff. When games are on the line, the game becomes tighter, faster, and harder. And Connor Hellebuyck has to be ready for it because this blue line, as great a story as Heinola has been this season, I don't see him sticking around. I think he's better served in the AHL, and we've seen this before, and Russ knows this better than anyone probably. The amount of guys who come in, look great in the preseason, have done stuff, but when the games get a little harder, and Mark Scheifele had this happen to him when he was scoring at will in the preseason his rookie year. He got 7 games, and it was like he'd vanished. He wasn't ready for what the real NHL looks like. And as much as Jets fans want Heinola to be good and succeed, he's probably better served in the AHL. And I think it's going to get real tough for him. And therefore, the blue line is a mess.
Yeah.
It is a hot mess.
I'll say these few things. Like, the one thing going for Heinola is he's one of those guys that really plays a simple game and doesn't make mistakes, so he might be able to get away with it. But their power play was ranked 5th in the league last year. They're going to drop 5 to 10 spots on that. Even if it's decent, they're going to drop because there's not that much gap between the Minnesota Wild and them. It was like 4%.
Yeah.
So they're going to drop because they're missing too much from last year to have as good a power play. So I think out of the gate, their power play will probably have some issues. I think Morrissey can handle that top spot. But now, who's the net front presence? Is it, you don't want Scheifele there because he's worth too much. Like,
it had to be Blake Wheeler, right? I mean,
yeah, it's been Blake Wheeler, but they've used a high slot, mid slot position for it. There's going to be tweaks. The bigger problem is who's on the PK.
Right, there you go.
Probably,
So now you run Morrissey on the PK too.
No,
you can't.
probably Kulikov.
Right,
Probably
there's a problem.
no, I mean is Paul Maurice the right coach for this team still? That's like one of the things I'm wondering.
That's a good question.
Because that's been forgotten about. Like in all the other stuff that's happened here. Like if everything was fine and the Jets were just the Jets going in and they don't even have Trouba, but they got Byfuglien, they got everything going on. My biggest thing would be about that. Maurice would be like, okay, but because everything else has happened, because all these RFAs haven't signed, I feel like the focus has been off the fact that Maurice really did not do a good job with this team last year. And
no, he didn't.
When Maurice heads south, he heads south fast, and that's his history.
Well, he's stubborn and he has trust issues.
A couple people in the chat are asking the question that I was just gonna ask Peter. Can the Jets afford to trade a forward like a Roslovic or an Ehlers if they don't pick up Hickey, if Byfuglien retires, and the big name now with Falk being traded out there is Ristolainen? Can they afford to trade a forward to get a defenseman who would take the place of Byfuglien?
I think they can, but I don't think they will unless it is the absolute right player. It can't be we give up this to hope this works. Like, that player is going to have to be like, if you're giving up Nick Ehlers just to make room for someone like Hickey, you better be getting something else in that deal, right? Like, I'm not saying you're saying Nick.
Right. I'm not saying trade Nick Ehlers to clear cap space for Hickey. I'm saying trade Ehlers or Roslovic in a deal for Ristolainen and trading.
I don't think there'd be any problem moving Roslovic. I think as much as he's actually had a fairly good preseason, I think there's trust issues with Maurice, and that that needs to be in context of what you can give. And if there was an offer to do it, I think they would.
Well, let me show you. I got two quick things on that real fast because I did just get a text from one of the Jets players. It's pretty funny. Who is watching and who said that we are definitely working Bufflin is what the text was. Like there's so the teammates are for what it's worth, it's like
they're trying to get him to come back.
They're talking to him, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I said, do you think it's going to get any? Do you think that'll work out? And he did not respond. But all I got was I'm definitely working Bufflin.
Yeah, you don't know what's in another person's head. It's hard to say. Like if Mike quits the show and I say, Mike, I mean, I know Eck is a real bastard, but try and come back for the good of the show. You don't know what he's thinking, so I get that.
Right. You wake up with a horny interest.
Let's move on to the St. Louis.
Just remember that. All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So
around the table quickly. Winnipeg playoff team or not?
No. Real quick. Another real rumor. Sorry. Okay. Rumor. Ehlers. Okay. You mentioned Ehlers, right?
Yep.
And I've mentioned the fact that I believe two teams are talking to the Jets, and I had a source, and I never get this. The source tell me that it was 99% that the Jets were going to make a trade in the first week or so of the season for a defenseman. That I never get a source will tell me anything like that. That's a crazy thing for a source to say. Okay, and he said they were talking to two teams: Buffalo, which obviously we would think would be Ristolainen, right, or the Flyers. And he said if they're talking to the Flyers, nothing's going to happen until the Flyers get back from Europe, right? Mm-hmm. So the Flyers have definitely had interest in Ehlers. There's no two ways about that. They've talked about it. It's been rumored. It's absolutely one of the players that they like.
Then it would be Gostisbehere, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, the two players that I've heard are Gostisbehere and I've heard Sanheim, right? So those are the two. No.
Chevy will hold out for right side. The guy's got to be able to play right side because
they both can.
Well, but Sanheim's a right-hand shot.
Sanheim's right-handed. Gostisbehere has played both sides, but Sanheim would be a perfect fit for the Winnipeg
Jets, right? Manitoba guy.
Right, perfect fit for the Jets in all which ways. But also one of the definite up and coming Flyers guys. So, but we have two teams that are in similar situations. So in the first few weeks of the season, we really have to pay attention to this because the Jets can't fall behind in the Central and the Flyers can't fall behind in Metro. And if either of those teams and the Flyers are kind of set up to fail in the beginning of the season, like they have when you look at their what was that?
Schedule-wise, yeah.
Schedule-wise, it's nuts. I mean, besides playing in Europe against Chicago, who is a really good team, and that's going to be a very hard game, I think. They come home to play New Jersey on their home opener, which is going to be a tough one, always a tough one for them. And now you're adding all this other stuff into New Jersey. And then what do? They go on a West Coast road trip. What's the NHL like? That's just nuts. Like from the NHL, like to throw you in time zone, from time zone to time zone. They're jumping 5 hours back to Philly and then 3 more hours back.
Had issues with that West Coast road trip before.
If the Flyers end up 1-6 or 1-5 or whatever, when all that's said and done, or 2-5, and the Jets come out and their defense is struggling and they don't know what's going on with Bufflin, there's a real good possibility there that could go down.
Right. I think Kevin Cheveldae is going to know within a week what's going on with Bufflin. I think this resolves pretty quickly.
I do too.
And
I think there's a chance he's going to get.
I would suspect that if you think of all the waiver stuff going on, there might be other teams that have desire to trade too. And if no one gets picked up on waivers and stuff, then we might see some horse trading, particularly early if a couple teams stumble a bit.
All right,
we'll move on now. Thanks. Sorry.
Quickly around the table. Winnipeg playoffs or not?
Playoff.
Yeah,
I think wild card.
Yeah,
wild card.
I'm not going to do any of these predictions. I can't legally.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Until we actually get to the.
No, that's fine because we're gonna do probably predictions and over unders later in the week.
I'll start my picks tomorrow, and
okay.
Then, there you go.
All right, so let's move to St. Louis.
They're an interesting team. Let's talk about them for a second. They actually did pick up a really good player, just recently.
Yeah, which was bizarre because I have to say the trade. It was Edmondson, Dominic Bach, and a draft pick for Falk and a draft pick, and then they signed Falk to a 7-year deal, $6.5 million. everybody's interpreted that as they're putting pressure on Pietrangelo and they're covering their butt in case Pietrangelo walks in free agency. And the talk is, well, Pietrangelo being one of the best defensemen in the league is going to demand something close to Doughty or Carlson. And
it's a brilliant trade, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a freaking brilliant. I mean, do you agree with me? I think it's a brilliant move by Armstrong. Like it does do that, even if it does that indirectly or directly, no matter how you want to slice it. It puts that Pietrangelo situation. It does shine the light on Pietrangelo right away. It also does something that's really fascinating, and that is bringing is when a team wins the Stanley Cup and then goes and does something like this. That is something that I have a huge amount of respect for, because it's just like, that is saying, okay, we know we won the Stanley Cup, but we don't expect ourselves to just win the Stanley Cup again, which is what happens with so many teams.
Well, again, I mean, last year, Bouwmeester started out really horribly. Now this year,
I for my friends in St. Louis, I think I mentioned this before, I bring back this one guy I don't talk to very often. It was really funny. So I was talking to him, and then I mentioned to him, when St. Louis was in the Stanley, I'm like, congratulations, your team won the Stanley Cup. And the text I had before that to him was, when the hell are we going to trade Bouwmeester? You had to go several months back in time because we hadn't talked for a long time. But it was like, can you please get someone to take Bouwmeester? He said to me.
Yeah.
And I'm I have to say, but just the whole thing of it was just really funny. Like that, you're right, because Bouwmeester, that kind of vanished in the success of everything. But he's not a year younger now.
Well, and the one thing that they're going to do, apparently, they toyed with it in training camp and in some preseason games, was moving Pietrangelo to the left side, which apparently he's done playing internationally, and having Falk play the right side. So they have three righties who are top four defensemen,
right?
And they're going to move one of them to the left side, because they have Parayko and Pietrangelo and Falk are all righties, and then probably Bouwmeester as the fourth. I think I think it's good that they bring in some new blood, so they don't bring back the same team.
Yeah.
But I really think it's going to depend on if they're going to compete for the Stanley Cup again. It's going to depend on Binnington playing like Binnington did in the second half of the year.
There's no reason to say he won't.
Well, no, I'm just saying
right now that
he has to.
Decided by goalies. I mean, that's honestly what it comes down to. To me, in my opinion, when I'm looking at the Central Division, there's so many teams that are so close and even, pretty much, that it will be decided by goalies. Like if Binnington, Halibut,
more
goes out there down the line.
There's a little bit more. Like early on, the struggles. Everybody talked about Tarasenko. If Tarasenko starts out hot, nobody talks about the Blues having a hangover. That's for sure. And the other thing is their fourth line's really good. And again, if you're playing Barbashev more because you got rid of Maroon, that's a positive. He's faster. He can play a rough game, but he actually has some scoring ability too. A little bit more, I think, than Maroon has now, other than just jamming around the crease. So I think they've added some aspects there. Honestly, Craig Berube still has something to prove. Just because he won the Stanley Cup, he has to prove he could start a season with a team and take them all the way through, because he couldn't do that in Philly either.
And I didn't see their final cuts, Russ, but I know from just scanning Twitter and seeing what was going on with some other teams in the league, that Klim Kostin was having a really good camp for them. So there's a guy who, if not at the beginning of the season,
he was let down.
Okay, so maybe later on the season he gets an opportunity.
Yeah. What I was told about with Klim Kostin is that, remember, Braden Shen is this is his final year of his contract.
Yeah.
Right.
So
get some more seasoning.
So I mean, if who knows what Braden Shen's going to demand, but on the open market, depends probably how far they go. Braden Shen was one of their best players last year, and they won the Stanley Cup. So I think it's going to be fascinating to watch Robert Thomas this year, to be honest, and see what he does. Because I think he's just star. Obviously, Binnington is the guy. He's the guy we have to really keep your best eye on.
I think they're top three.
He's your average, first year goalie. Sorry, and so he's more mature than your average second year goalie too.
He's definitely more mature.
I think they're top three in the Central.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can go there. I mean, if you look at the Central, it's probably going to be Colorado, St. Louis, and Nashville and Dallas battling it out for the top three.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you can throw them in a hat, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's true. I actually think
I think Colorado is the team to beat. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think we are too.
They're trying to get a backup goalie. They're really working hard on that, apparently.
Well, they have Pavel Francouz, and right now they seem to love him, X. So he's the guy at the moment. But I do agree, and I even said this when I picked the Avs to go pretty far. I won't give out away how far unless you've already listened to another show. I do think that Francouz, if he proves himself, they're fine. If not, if all of a sudden they feel like Grubauer's not exactly right and Francouz isn't exactly right, they can maneuver a goalie trade mid-season and really make a run. So I think that's part of their plan too.
Or if they like one of these goalies that is placed on waivers, Comrie or DeSmith or something like that, that's a cheap way to do it. They have the cap space. Now,
would be a great fit for them.
Now let's move to the team that they beat in the Western Conference Final, which was San Jose. And I have to start with this. After watching the video of Evander Kane yesterday in the final preseason game, losing his mind against Vegas. I sort of got the David Clarkson sort of, getting suspended for 10 games because he made contact with the referee and there's a question of whether he gets suspended for 10 or for 3. They paid him big money, Peter. He's a talented player, but he is a loose cannon. And, that team's got a lot of talent and they could go very far with the defense that they have. They need better goaltending out of Martin Jones. But I keep going back to Evander Kane and him being a key member of that team and him not having the character and the self-control to keep things in check.
When is he is this a trend for him? Or is it just sort of some weird thing that just kind of you had a trigger and something triggered you and you kind of flipped out? I mean, the problem with Kane is that there's a whole bunch of things that there's a narrative that's been created around him. And so when something like this happens, it brings back all the other things and it sort of fits into this narrative as you described it, Mike, right or wrong. But that's sort of the story that gets told about him. This is the kind of case where Kane's a veteran now. He should know better than this. He shouldn't be coming unhinged in a preseason game. So, this is where you need that leadership to take him aside and say, dude, you're all this. You don't have to be that.
Well, I mean, he's not the official.
On the team? Burns? Carlson?
Thornton?
He shoved the official when he got up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's,
I didn't see it. I haven't seen this yet. I know about it.
It looks like he did.
Yeah.
And Mike said yes, too. I have no room for that in this league. And this isn't the Sharks' fault because nobody can control Evander Kane. I think last year they did a really good job because they are a great organization. But if I'm the league, I'm suspending him for 10 games. I don't care what his previous record is. I don't care anything. You can't have this happen with officials and players. You just can't. Players, even the yelling part, there's a point where I know they'll get a penalty for abuse of officials, but then there should be more too, because there is a point where you can't let these players cross a line with the refs. It's just not right.
I think we need to understand what it is that set him on. What was it something that was said to him, or just what happened?
I watched there was a 4-minute section in the third period. Vegas was leading 5-1, and Aaron Dell shouldered Mark Stone going around the net, and then it was basically a cluster of.
This rivalry is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, teams hate each other. Now, I'm just trying to focus on, because San Jose is extremely talented. They bring Thornton back. They lose Pavelski in free agency. I think there's enough firepower there, Russ. They got some good young kids, and they've got that big three in Vlasic, Carlson, and Burns on defense. Again, I think it comes down to goaltending because Martin Jones sucked last year during the regular season and played a little better in the playoffs, but he couldn't play up to what Binnington had played in the conference final. And he's got to get back to the Martin Jones of a couple years ago. And if he does that, I think they could come out of that division and get to the Western Conference final again.
I mean, definitely, again, Martin Jones is of course huge with them. And he did get better as the year went on. There were moments in the beginning of the year where it really looked scary. But he got better. And in the playoffs against Vegas, he was pretty good. I mean, like,
all right, hold on. Here's the quote from Evander Kane. Sorry, Ak.
Yeah.
I get kicked out of the game for getting jumped from behind by a referee, Kane said following the loss. I've never seen a ref take 5 strides. If you look at his face, he's getting all this power, and he's trying to drive me into the ice, which is what he did. That's unbelievable. Talk about abuse of an official. How about abuse of a player? It's an absolute joke. Well, I got to tell you, this is going to get bad now.
He's fighting a battle that he cannot win.
No.
You're going to tell me that the official is trying to drive you in the ice? Evander, you're about as much in control of your emotions on the ice than you were on Chippewa in Buffalo at the 2016 draft.
Yeah, this shows why he should get a 10-game suspension just for thinking that.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that though.
At least David Clarkson was coming to the defense of a player on his team that was being attacked by a giant in John Scott. That was maybe stupid, but it was justified.
Right.
You know, Kane. I'm sorry. I have a little patience.
I mean, a couple quick things with this team. One, people don't give Dylan enough credit on defense. He is really actually a great defender as well. That's why they moved Braun without a second thought. And Dylan just with Eriksson, they were that was a fantastic pairing. Dylan, and it's not easy to play with Eriksson. I mean, like that's like or Carlson. I always call him Eriksson. Sorry, Erik Karlsson. With Carlson, it was a fantastic.
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not easy. You know, it's not easy to sit there.
No, the most successful defensive pairing for Erik Karlsson in his entire career was Mark Mathot, and Mark Mathot was an okay defenseman. If you can play well with Karlsson, you're good. I mean, that's what matters because Karlsson's going to dominate. You just have to be able to fill in. It's a totally different game if you play with Karlsson. I mean, like, you know, we all remember Matt Carl in Philly with Pronger. You know, like that was like it's a different game when you play with certain kinds of defensemen. Matt Carl was great at it with Pronger, but Matt Carl got a big contract out of that, went somewhere else and really was nothing special. Yeah, but you know what? When you play with a Hall of Famer like Pronger, Jaro Spacek looked great when he was with Edmonton, and he wasn't a great defenseman when he played with Pronger. Away from Pronger.
No, but a defense, especially with Karlsson, even more so, is a forward. Like Karlsson is a fourth forward on the ice. That's what he does. So you are sometimes the only defenseman, you know, with Karlsson. Pronger is a little bit more defensive minded, but with Karlsson, yeah. I mean, when you think of what they've done, they've lost Pavelski, Nyquist, and Donskoy. 3, like, I mean, I think Donskoy I've always liked Donskoy more than most. He has struggled, but the other two, I mean, obviously Pavelski and Nyquist were 2 really good players for them.
I mean, Nyquist was a rental, so I mean, you had to
it was good for them, and they replaced it with Yurtaikin, Brzezinski, and Bergman, right? So that's basically the difference. So they've brought in 3 guys that are relatively young. Brzezinski was really good last year for a while, but didn't play that many games. But I do like him. They are kind of in the middle. You have this big thing of Pavelski's. It was Pavelski's team. Now it's Logan Couture's team. It's like there's a lot of shifting going on here. Yeah, and I think is going to be. What was that, Russ?
It's definitely Couture's team, but I felt like it got that way last year anyhow.
Yeah, I did too. It was already Couture's team. It has been for a little while.
Yeah.
Because they're both such strong characters. But at the end of the day, the fact they didn't bring in Marleau is still a little bit surprising. But I will say that they didn't bring him in because they really like their young guys that much.
Yeah, but I also heard this, and I can't remember where, but it does make sense in terms of Marleau, is that Marleau – They wanted Marleau back, but they would not guarantee Marleau that he would play every game like he had played with Toronto because he has the consecutive game streak, and because they wouldn't guarantee it. That was the reason why they didn't re-sign him. If that's the case, then you know I think that's a little short-sighted on Marleau. I mean,
that's the case. That are interesting about the Sharks. I'm really going to watch Sorensen. I like him. I don't think he's a star player, but I think he just adds a lot to the mix. Yeah. I was fascinated that the NHL Network could rank Timo Meier 70th in the league this year in fantasy, which is just like, come on, guys. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. Right. You know, considering he had 30 goals and probably around, 65?
He's got tons of skill, no questions asked, but they can't put him there.
No. And LeBanc is going to have a prove-it year this year to make big money, and I bet you.
I'll give you the most interesting story about the San Jose Sharks. The fact that they hired Ned Coletti as a scout. I mean, this is a guy that was a GM for the Los Angeles Dodgers and then a front office guy for the San Francisco Giants when they won their championship. And now he's a hockey scout. He's always been a hockey fan. Right. And I listened to his interview the other day on Sirius, and I have to admit, I am not 100% convinced this will work, but they gave him a little tryout last year. They liked what they saw. He's going to be a pro scout. I'm going to see him at the rink. I'm certainly going to talk to him because I'm fascinated by this.
Well, it worked for Paul DePodesta with the Browns. Let me just ask. Okay, so I think top 3 in the Pacific for San Jose.
Yeah, I do too.
Peter?
Yeah, I think so as well.
Okay, we'll leave that out of it.
I'll tell you that much, but I'll tell you where I put him later, but I don't think that.
Okay. So finally, and this will be an easy team to go over because they bring back most of the same players from last year, and they were the best team in the league in the regular season, but then got shocked in that 4-game sweep against Columbus, and that's Tampa Bay.
They were the best team in the NHL for a lot for in the NHL season for years. I mean, they were incredibly dominant. Like, let's just say whether they were beyond. Part of it had to do with playing the division I think they played in, but it's still like they did have. I mean, it was interesting. Someone did ask me that question. If they played, if you flip them out, say you flip Columbus and Tampa, you put Tampa in the Metro division, they still win the division. But what kind of points do they put up? Like how many points do they get in the Metro?
Well, I mean, more than half of the. I mean, 4 teams in the Atlantic were terrible last year. Ottawa, right. Buffalo, Detroit, and Florida was underachieving. So
they lost no games to them. Like they took apart the teams that were terrible. They were really, when you look at their schedule, they were just, and that's what you should do, but that's usually not what happens, right?
I mean, I look at Tampa and I think they'll still, win their division. I think they'll have fewer points than the year before, but there is a way to get to the playoffs, and then there's a way to play in the playoffs. And I got to say, there is a point where you have to start getting a little skeptical about John Cooper in the playoffs. Did he reach his high point already, and is he already in decline in the playoffs? That's the question you have to ask, because that's happened to a lot of coaches in this league.
Yeah, and I think their only Achilles heel, and it's not much of one, but after the top 2 of Hedman and McDonough, they're 3 through 6 on the blue line likely will be Shattenkirk, Braden Coburn, Sergachev, and Eric Cernak. I think it's okay. I think Shattenkirk will probably play better there than he did with the Rangers the last couple of years because he's going to have talent around them. But it's not like locked down one of the best defensive cores in the league. So I think that other teams might be able to exploit that.
Cernak can play the Schuster role for Cooper, so that's good.
Yeah, but he's more talented than Schuster.
He is.
I thought it was interesting that ESPN ranked their prospect pool as 26th in the NHL.
That's insane.
That's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 3 or 4 guys playing in Syracuse right now that for lower level NHL teams would be in the NHL already.
All right. Well, I'm just saying with that. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the case. I don't know prospects like you guys do, but that's why I brought that up because I thought it was really cool.
Pull them up because it's 26 is crazy. Like this is a team that drafts very well. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, Kachuk, Volkov.
They have 2 prospects in the top 100 according to
Mitchell Stevens.
Those are their best guys. I gotta hold on.
Cal Foot, Nolan Foot. I mean, give me a.
They have Alex Barclay and Cal.
And that's a guy who has a super high end with skill and scoring ability. So that's a good one to start out with because a lot of people don't even know about him.
Who was that, Russ?
Alex Barclay. I forget.
Yeah.
Alex
and I forgot Taylor Radish too. So
Alex Barry-Burley, maybe it's Alex Barry-Burley.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it so I can pronounce it right. But it's also you look at like Taylor Radish is another good example. That's a kid who I do think will make it, but again, it's hard to get a roster spot on this team. So I think they're getting graded harshly because guys can't break the roster. But yeah, as an example, and I like Kachuk a lot. I do. Lieber Hodgick just made the Rangers, so that was one of their guys.
Right.
Now, Borre, I got to see what year he was drafted. Because I want to pull up his numbers because they're really impressive. But, remember D'Angelo was one of their guys too. And Matthew Joseph, like he's been playing with them.
Yeah.
Like that's a guy who's only played 70 games. Right. So he's just out of the prospect stage. But yeah, I mean, that's another guy. You also Ryan Lowen, who plays in college, he's actually a guy that who's from PA, who actually plays pickup hockey in PA locally here during the summer. he's a heck of a player, played for UMass. He's just starting to play with Syracuse now. That's a guy who was almost a point a game last year with UMass. So that's another guy who's a really good prospect that I don't think a lot of people have seen enough. I like Cole Kopke.
Yeah.
That's a good player. So they do have players. You gotta look at and be able to just say, how can they break through? So here's Alex Bourret's numbers, because again, he wasn't even drafted, right? So you start with that. Oh no, he was drafted. No, hold on. I got the wrong Alex Bourret. Keep going.
Right.
One thing I'll say about this that I think is interesting about them is the Patrick Maroon pickup was a brilliant one, because it is one for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because Patrick Maroon feels like he's like the next Justin Williams, doesn't he? Like he feels like this.
I don't know about that. I think he
brings that kind of player to your team.
I think he's a poor man's Ryan Callahan. I think that's what he is.
Yeah, but I think he time will tell, but it feels like having a guy who won last year and won the Stanley Cup last year is not a bad thing to add.
No.
And who won the Stanley Cup and he wasn't like a big contributor. He should have played more for the Blues, in my opinion, than he did, because he was better than they weren't. They just didn't seem to want to play him as much.
Yeah. All right. So here's the numbers on Alex Bourret. That's what always throws me off. It's another B. He was undrafted, like I said, only 5'10" at the time. So last year, he had 116 points in the queue. So 116 points in 65 games, 27 and 19 in the playoffs. Then he goes down to Syracuse and he has 68 points in 74 games, 34 goals. Even just by having him, you can't be ranked 26th.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. That's
puts in otherwise.
Well, okay, so quickly around the horn, I think they're top 3 in the Atlantic. I think probably they win the division, but it's going to be tight with the Leafs in Boston and maybe Florida. But I think top 3 for Tampa.
I do too.
Peter?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm going out on a limb and say I don't believe they're winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if they're winning the Stanley Cup, but I think they come out of the East this year.
Let's finish on this. We'll just take one question because we've gone long today, but let's finish on this one, Ak. Mark Peterson asks, anyone hear what the possible deal would be that the Pens have on Jack Johnson? It's been widely reported that Jack Johnson is going to be traded fairly soon by the Penguins. I honestly say I would be stunned that they get anything back unless it's a salary dump going back the other way with 4 years left at $3.25 million for a guy who was a healthy scratch for them during the playoffs. But have you heard anything, Ak?
I heard they have 2 teams that are interested in him and that they could make a trade with. So yeah, they're going to get something for him. Now, whether or not I don't think they're going to get a ton for him, of course, but they have 2 teams that are willing to take him. One is Montreal. And that I was told, which is, a interesting one again, but
I'm cheering for that.
But Montreal's biggest weaknesses last year, we talked about this before, goaltending and power play. So like they're going to see if they see Jack Johnson as like a possible help on the power play.
Maybe I don't know about that because they have Weber and they have Petrie, and Petrie's got.
All right, so here's the funny thing about Jack Johnson and the power play.
Yep.
Initially, early in his career, he could have been thought of as a power play guy, and then as the NHL went on, he really wasn't. But there was one year where he did get power play time and did do well. And he sort of scoffed with me that he was a really good power play guy because I was like, well, I think this is like, you're surprising people on the power play. And he didn't like that I said that. But pretty much his career is proving that he's not really that guy. So I don't know if you're getting him for that. I don't think he played in the preseason game that I saw him in. And obviously I was just in Pittsburgh. So nobody can believe that they'll be able to trade him in anything but a dump because of his contract.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything but a dump either, but I think that there's 2 teams that are willing to take a shot, and that would be Montreal. And the other team I'm not certain on, but I keep hearing, which is fascinating, would be Phoenix. And I don't know why Phoenix would do that.
Well, okay, let's just go back to Montreal.
I don't know why anyone would. That's the weird thing, and this is what I don't understand. There's going to be a pick going to take him.
Well, the only thing I can surmise here is this could be another one of those crap for crap deals where
maybe.
Now if it's Montreal, How about Carl Alsner? He got sent down to the minors. He's making $4.25. He's making $1 million.
He would be a perfect pickup for Pittsburgh.
Right, but his contract is a year shorter, so that would sort of balance out. And we know that Montreal needs left side D. They've got the right side taken care of with Weber and with Petrie, but
that would work too, Mike, because they're $400,000 over the cap and have to get cap compliant before the season starts. So
Montreal might retain. They might retain to get rid of Alsner because it's clearly
Johnson's making 3.5, so they'd be okay.
That would fit.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So as for Arizona, I mean, they don't have as much cap space as they used to. That's the thing. It's like
I don't think Arizona can do it. Honestly, Arizona may be getting the goalie last minute because we don't even know who their 2 goalies will be on opening night.
Yeah, unless you're talking about like a deal where they're moving Jason Demers or Alex Goligoski or something like that, and it's if they think that will balance things out, or they think Johnson's an improvement. I don't think he would.
How about is this something that Lou would do on the island?
No, not for Jack Johnson.
Not anymore. I mean, if this was Jack Johnson,
Nicky, why is he taking Johnson?
Yeah.
No, I know, but I'm curious as to why he's
Nicky for Johnson.
That's the other thing. Like to me, like that's the other thing that I'm like thinking about. Like okay,
Nicky for Johnson.
Like why are you dropping Hickey? Like I think him dropping Hickey, like Lewis tends to do things in that have like several steps to them.
Well, they're creating room for Noah Dobson because Dobson made the team. Apparently.
Dobson made it.
So
right. But maybe that's.
But you don't know whether that's just a 9-game look or if it's or whatever. But we'll see. But okay.
All right. Well, that's pretty much all the time we have today. We went long, guys. Tomorrow we'll be back. We only have 4 teams to go. We'll finish.
Yep. Toronto, Washington, Vegas, and Vancouver.
4 more interesting teams, and then we'll get into on Wednesday. I guess we'll get into our annual prediction show.
Yes.
So. Can't wait, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. If you're around, I guess right now on the NHL Network or